Hey, it's Huck. A number of things been going on, and I'm kind of gearing myself up to doing a more in-depth video on, the whole Mueller investigation and how it seems to be, much further along, I think, than most of us have been led to believe. It does really seem like they are narrowing their focus more and more on, on Trump himself and on his little tight inner circle, being, obviously his son-in-law, his lawyer, personal lawyer, Cohen. And so a lot of the things that have been, showing up in the news, just recently has really, I think, probably got Trump, well, we're going to have to see, but I would say in the next 2 or 3 weeks, I would not be a bit surprised to see him, panic big time and make some kind of attempt to, to fire Mueller one way or the other. Whether it be by trying to replace, well, at any rate, that's for a video coming, that's something I really want to sit down and kind of assemble my thoughts in a more linear fashion than I've been prone to do with these videos. Today I wanted to focus a little bit on, one, I think this really rather maybe unappreciated effort that was launched down in West Virginia by these teachers. Now, the teachers went on a wildcat strike, and that's, I think, probably the biggest part of the news, is how they actually went about doing this. West Virginia, like a lot of southern states, a lot of red states, have basically taken all the teeth out of what few unions still exist. And, of course, they've been trying nationwide to undermine the teachers' unions. Currently, there are 2 teachers' unions in the country, and as a result of things like that happened in Wisconsin, was attempted here in Ohio, unions have been, by and large, I don't want to say putty in the hands of the Republican legislators, but they really haven't. When push comes to shove, they basically fall over pretty easily. And so this was not a top-down strike. I think what I found fascinating was that how this strike began actually were from local union leaders, local teachers, basically getting on social media, primarily Facebook, and saying this is something we really need to do. And in effect, they completely circumvented, the national union, and launched this, as it turned out, 9-day strike. And they were pretty amazing. I know there were several times when, they were led to believe there was going to be they were going to be able to get a 5%, wage hike, and in other words, that, their demands were going to be met. I know the governor of the state basically said, go back to work. I got this. And then, of course, the legislature, in fact, tried to step it back a little bit, giving them basically a 4% wage hike instead of the 5% that had been promised to them. But they never went back to work. They decided they were going to stay out on this wildcat strike until the legislature actually voted and got the job done. And so now I think what we're going to see is, as has been reported, there are several other states that are taking a hard look at this. Oklahoma is one example. They are, according to at least the reports that I've seen, probably the lowest paid teachers nationwide. I think Mississippi is right down there, maybe listed 49th, and West Virginia is 48th. But this is an issue that teachers in most red and purple states have long been facing. And I know Ohio's no exception. I think you wouldn't get an argument from the teachers in Kansas. What has happened in red state after red state is that, these states continue to find ways to, to cut back on state taxes. And in Ohio's case, Kasich came into office, and basically the very first thing he did was initiate a corporation tax cut. And inevitably, that, like each of the subsequent years that Kasich had been in office here now, this is his 8th year and final year, thank God. The teachers, along with other state employees, feel the brunt of it. Tens of thousands of teachers' jobs have been lost. Schools all across the state have had to, find funding elsewhere, basically by going to their local voters and saying, well, we're going to have to put a levy on the ballot. And as a result, school budgets have been cut drastically. Schools are, cutting back on programs, cutting back on teachers. It's in Ohio. It's pretty much the norm to have what we call pay to play, whether it is certain extracurricular activities like your kid wants to be a marching band, or whether he wants to participate or she wants to participate in some type of athletic program. There might be a $75 or even $100 fee associated with your child participating in a given extracurricular. And so, these are the results of Republican legislation that has largely defunded, the job that states have to do. Whether it be repairing the roads and, giving back certain services like education to your students. And Democrats have always felt that, if anything, the state should be doing much more. Not only because we should be paying teachers more, not only because there should be, more Bureau of Motor Vehicle offices so that we don't have to wait in line for, an hour or drive 20 miles to get to one. Democrats believe that, there is tax money needed. And so all I'm saying is that this is the first time we've seen in quite some time, in really more than 10 years. I can't remember the last really big strike, statewide strike, carried on in any red state, but it has been a while. And what I think will be really important in the coming months is to see how this translates not only in how other states start applying the lessons learned in West Virginia and their success, but how, now that they've had this success, of how they use that, newfound momentum and organizational ability to register voters, get voters, to the polls, to change, the reality in their state house by electing, Democrats or independents, but to get these doggone Republicans out of office where possible. And so I think there's a big lesson there from West Virginia, one that hopefully, other states are going to follow up on. I certainly hope, Ohio state workers are paying attention. And that's the other thing about this strike. It wasn't just teachers that benefited from it. This is a 5% wage hike for all state employees, regardless of, what their vocation is. If they're a state employee, they all got, now the troubling aspect of this is that, West Virginia, of course, they're not saying they're going to hike any taxes. They're saying that they're going to make cuts, to come up with the estimated $160 million or whatever it's going to cost to, make good now on this, wage increase. And they're promising to make cuts to other services, and particularly, I think, in the very troubling to Medicaid. So I think that's why it's going to be so vitally important for, this momentum to carry over into November and in the years beyond, to get some common sense back into the legislature and realize that, healthcare is not something anybody should be cutting. This is not a service in the way that they, we can depend on whether we want, some, vehicle to go by and pick up your grass clippings, every week. That's a service. We can determine whether or not we're going to send somebody out to, well, you get the idea. The point is, there are some services that are basically a fundamental right, and a core value of our society. One is the education of our young people. Another is the health care of all of our citizens. And when you start saying, well, we're going to cut those so that people don't have to pay taxes, there is just an absence of value, an absence of what it means to be a human being in the real sense. So anyway, like I said, I'm going to be trying to put together some thoughts on this whole Robert Mueller probe and where it's leading us. I really do think things are picking up pretty quickly, obviously. We've already had, a number of individuals who have basically either taken a plea deal and pleaded guilty or are, cooperating, apparently, with the Mueller investigation. And a lot of this now seems to have to do with some of the efforts that are being looked into as far as things that were going on, not just during the campaign itself, but during that transition period when Trump had won the election but had not yet been inaugurated. I know they're looking at some of these meetings that were held. For instance, there were meetings held in the Seychelles. There seems to be some kind of a weird alliance between Russia, the United Emirates, and the Trump Organization. There seems to be a connection between the Trump Organization and a prominent Russian bank. So I think a lot of the Trump Organization finances and a lot of the Trump campaign finances are probably being looked at with a magnifying glass, and I I can only imagine what they're finding. But at any rate, I'm going to try to put all of this together in a more coherent fashion and maybe present a video hopefully before the end of this month. Anyway, that's all I've got for you today. I am presently getting set to go pick up a friend of mine and have him come over today. He's going to help me try to clean up around here a little bit and get a little order back into at least my living room space here. It badly needs cleaned and scrubbed, and these hardwood floors need a lot more care than I'm able to give it. So I'm going to pay him just a little bit to help me with that effort. And it's tough. This is a rough month. But be honest with you, it's not healthy for me to be around all this dust. I've got to keep things a little cleaner than they are. So we're going to get that done today. Anyway, I thank you very much for watching. I look forward to hearing from you, and leave some comments if you will. And I'll get back with you again real soon.